He went at home after the seminar. Next day in the morning, he asked him, how was it? And he said to him, it was so fantastic because for about years, he had again contact with his daughter.
Wow.
And I must, when I tell the story, I still have, I'm quite touched with it because this is what PCM is about.
Hi, this is your Project Management Cowboy coming back to you with a new topic. One of the recent podcasts that we did with a psychologist, and we talked about personality types. That was not a sponsored event. None of our podcasts are sponsored in the sense that we're trying to sell you anything. Our job is to kind of provide you, when you're searching for methodologies and tools, access information to make better decisions of whether or not this methodology might work for you in your situation. In the kind of extended universe of talking about developing leadership in your project teams, your program teams, or even in your line organizations, we've dedicated a couple of our podcasts to the subject matter of personality traits, although I think Uwe, who's our guest today, will probably object to the wording, but he'll be able to say something about that. We'll see. Yeah. Okay. I'd like to introduce our guest today, Uwe Reiner-Kolouch. Did I say it right?
Yes.
Okay,
correct.
Good. And we're going to be talking about PCM, which stands for?
Process Communication Model.
Okay. So for those of you out there that have never heard of this before, don't feel bad. We're not just going to give you a good summary of what it is, but we're going to kind of get into the nitty-gritty and give you an idea of what value it might provide you in your team development, your communication, and in that wonderful word collaboration. Okay? Uwe, welcome.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Good. I'm happy to have you. What we kind of always do at the beginning of our podcasts, I'm always a big fan. When I look at podcasts, I want to know who is this person, right? Yeah. Before you give all the world's wisdoms away, it would be kind of interesting to know what your background is so that people can kind of gauge where do you come from, what is your background, how did you ever get into this topic, so they can kind of get a feeling for you. Okay. I call it the passion journey.
The passion journey.
Wonderful terminology. Go ahead and let us know a little bit about yourself.
The passion journey, yeah. I'm quite passionate about PCM, okay, but it was a journey to get there. So I'm originated from Austria. I'm from Styria, and it happened to be that I studied industrial engineering in Vienna.
So you just studied something serious before you got into PCM.
Yeah. So I always say I studied the things that you really need when dealing with human beings.
Yes. Okay.
Industrial engineering. Yeah. So, as you can imagine, with industrial engineering, there's not a lot of lessons about how to deal with people. So I focused on quality management. I was part of an auditing organization, and then I stepped into the Yellow Pages business as a quality manager. First job, quite enthusiastic, and there I realized, making audits and conducting audits is all about communication, dealing with distress, and I was not prepared for this. Okay. So, but I learned a lot about people, and what I didn't know so far, I did my civil services before with the Red Cross in Vienna. So I transported people from the hospital home to the ambulatorium and back home. And what I didn't know, this was a boot camp for communication, 11-month boot camp.
If I can just interject for those of you who are not familiar with Austria, Austria has a mandatory military service of, I think, 8 months.
8 months, no, I don't.
7 months, 8 months, something like that. And you can also opt out and do civil service, which is what you did.
Yes.
My sons also did civil service, so you drove for the Red Cross.
Yes. So, and it was a real boot camp for communication because you have to get some sense in the job that you're doing. And my goal was to have a good contact with the people I accompanying from the hospital at home, from after a surgery. There were people from the old people from the, how do you call this, the Altersheim,
from the pensioners' home.
Pensioners' home, and to get a contact and make the stay in our car as nice as possible.
So different walks of life.
Yeah.
Right. Different levels of distress.
Definitely.
Different levels of cognitive awareness, probably.
Definitely.
Okay.
And but I was not aware that this was a cool boot camp for communication. I was aware later on. because I was offered a human resource job in this Yellow Pages company. Why? Because I asked my boss to say, why are you offering this job to me? Because I don't have any contact with human resources. And he told me the following things, and I remember them back quite well, because he told me, he said, Uwe, you know all the processes in the house, because I was auditing all the processes. You have a good contact with the people, and the rest you have to learn.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, if he trusts me, I will do it. And then I started with this HR business, and I really stepped in a complete new world, dealing with people in an organization, with managers, with employees, with this work law stuff and things. I was really interested. And then I detected when you deal with organizations, there are similar patterns compared to the technical systems that you're developing.
You're referring to a term that's often used. People often refer to the system, but most people don't understand what they're referring to. It's that wonderful yin-yang between there's the technical side, there's the process side, there's the thing side, there's the facilities, the processes, the standard operating procedures. But the most dominating form is the human dynamic form, and that's the other factor.
And it's a system as well.
Yeah, and it's part of the system.
Yeah, and the patterns are quite similar. And I was astonished because I realized this because I did a coaching, education, organizational development, and things like that, and I fell into a complete new world. And I was really passionate about working with people, with human beings in an organization. Why they are doing this stuff? Why they are going to the same job all day long? So 24 hours a day, normally they are working for the company. So, and I was so fascinated, and I learned a lot about cultures because I had different management styles in our company, because I started with an Austrian management style, a private-owned company. Then there was a Swedish management. As you can imagine, the Swedish management culture is a little bit different, avoiding conflicts and very superficial democratic style. And then they sold the company to Verizon, an US business. So
that's a big shift.
What's happened? And so I also getting into contact with different cultures, and this was I was so fascinated by the different ways of motivating people, of creating environments that people are motivated in. And there was one crucial employee survey that we did, and there were two managers who were best. The good thing is I was one of them.
Oh, good.
Yeah. But the interesting thing is the other one was the finance director, and he was a complete opposite personality than I was, with a complete different management style. And I asked myself the question, why the hell is he getting so good results?
Okay, interesting.
And then I asked his managers, I said, why the hell are you voting so good for this person? He said, do you know what? Yes, he may be a little bit loud sometimes. He was shouting. You can hear him across the offices. But what he is doing, you always know what he is doing, and you can calculate him. So you can assume what will be the next decision.
He's predictable.
He's predictable.
He's predictable. He's reliable. He's authentic.
Yes.
Okay.
And this is also a quality that's very important. You can talk about the style. I have a different one, but I was so fascinated. Hey, there must be different ways to roam that are successful. And
if I can just jump in, because you've nailed, I think, two of the essential key factors in development of leadership and management. The first factor you mentioned is you had a fairly extensive technical education, which is valuable, gave you a framework to understand probably a fairly difficult studies. But as soon as you moved upward or into reality, you realized that's what we call the I development. I don't know if you remember, right? They have the I development. You start at the bottom and you kind of work up. And then somewhere along the line, somebody came up to you and said, okay, but if you want to move forward now, you have to have a horizontal development, kind of that T development, where you realize that your technical background is only going to get you so far. It can help you to understand other things, but you're going to have to know something about people, about leadership, about communication, about processes, about quality, about legal, about all different things that you didn't really actually study. So you learned that life is a mixture of different things, which I think is valuable. Great. So you move forward, and you were talking about, and the other thing you mentioned is that there are different management styles.
Definitely. Yes.
Okay.
And different successful management styles. And this was so impressive for me because what happened then is the last ownership I was aware of, there was the company was sold to a financial investor.
Okay.
And this was again a completely different culture because only money is
it was all about the KPIs.
You reduce the marketing budgets, the HR budgets. You're just making the bride pretty to sell it again. Okay. And this was the time where I decided, oh, this is not the culture I want to work for. And parallel to this, I started a life counseling education. Okay. It's a 2.5 years, 3 years education in Austria. It's between coaching and therapy. Yeah. So quite intensive.
And actually Austrians are, and also Germans have a long-standing history with this. You don't see this so much in the United States. This is really, Austrians and Germans love to take whatever it is. If it's becoming an electrician, there's a 3-year education program. If you become anything, any vocation or any profession requires you an extensive. And I think that's great that in Austria, there's different versions. There's Systemica, there's life coaches. Yes. And yours was called?
It's a life counseling. It's a Lebensberater.
Yeah.
So where you deal with really difficult...
life coach.
Yeah, life coach, where you really learn to deal with difficult situations in life. Like... You're losing your job, you don't have any money anymore, or illness or whatever. Yeah. And how to accompany people through these phases. And there I get in touch with process communication model. Okay. And I was so fascinated because, as you know, as an HR guy, I think all of the HR guys out in the world knows it. Every week there are at least 1 or 2 ringing the bell and say, hey, I have a cool model it's a must that you use it. Because we have a nice questionnaire, it's a nice report, and it describes everything. Yeah,
and it's a reinvention, the 105th reinvention of the wheel.
Yeah, and it was so boring because I know these people, and now I'm one of these guys who's ringing the bell.
Hopefully you're better than them.
Yeah, I hope. But the interesting thing is, I was so fascinated from PCM because it's different in a way. It works in every situation. So because it's a communication model. And this was so fascinating for me. It's not about putting people into boxes and say, hey, you're a green one and
you're a blue one, or
bad luck for you.
Or you have these
this
3
green box. Keep there.
Or you're a DISFM.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Because PCM derives from the communication side, and we come back to this later. And it was so fascinating for me because when you deal with people, it's all about communication. Yeah. So it's not about personalities. Yeah. It's about how we deal with the personalities. Yeah. And this you can see in the one-to-one. Do we have a connection? Yes or no?
Well, let me kind of do a second part of the intro. Like I said, the last podcast we did the PAPI model, and we talked about it extensively. We kind of gave you an introduction also to the different personality types. For those of you who might be asking yourself the question, why should personality types or this kind of evaluation be interesting? Because, as you mentioned, teams are so important. Understanding who you're working with, what motivates them, what their characteristics are, what the situational leadership style that you need, what kind of communication works best with them.
May I interrupt?
Yeah, please do.
Because you're talking about understanding.
Yeah.
I like the comparison. You drive a car.
Yep.
Right. Do you know how your engine is working and the cylinders and the electricity? Do you know this?
I could fake it and give you some kind of pseudo mechanical answer, but the answer is no, and I don't really care.
So and it's the same with communication. I do not care about the personality you have and what's destructed, what are the puzzle pieces, how you are fitted together. I even do not care. Is your liver at the right place or or your lung or whatever? Yeah. With the brain, maybe we should talk about that. We will see the behavior. But I do not care about the structural thing. Yeah. I do care about what's happening when I make you an offer and what's the response. And this is with the car. When I offer a little bit of speed to the car, what's the response of the car in this specific context on ice in a steep
I can
curve.
tell that you're passionate about the topic, but I do want to make sure that we create a starting point so that we can, because you're already into the differentiation, and I want you to get into the differentiation, because I think there's a big difference if we're looking at PAPI, if we're looking at DISC, or we're looking at the different other personality types. Just to underline this, why would you use this is to better understand your team and create better communication and better collaboration, okay? Now, one of the reasons I picked PCM is because you are different, and I'm not educated in PCM, but I do have, we both have a mutual friend, Marcus, who's constantly practicing it on me. And I always thought, what I thought was very refreshing about his approach is very pragmatic.
Yeah.
So let's take a step back. So for those people out there who said, you know what, I'm looking at this personality type model, should it be DISC, or should it be this, or should it be that? Most of those models are based on something called the Big Five, right?
Yeah, so different.
What the heck is the Big Five again? Do you?
No, I don't.
Well, we
if
covered
I say something wrong, I'd say nothing.
We covered it in the last one, but maybe put into the screen real quick a summary of the Big Five. But one of the things I thought was interesting is PCM is substantially different than these personality models. So let's start off maybe with the entry point. What's kind of the background of PCM? Where does it come from? Let's maybe go through some of the basic frameworks, and then we can go into where's the differentiation, and most important, why we have you, because you've been a PCM master practitioner for how long now?
For the master trainer for about 10 years.
Okay. So, and I know this about you. He's really got extensive real life experience with it, and that's why we've invited him, so that he can kind of give you an insight. Is PCM the right thing for you? So let's kind of start off with the history.
So where does it start from? Mr. Taby Kaler, I met him yesterday in a webinar. He's now, I think, 81 years old.
Wow.
And he developed this model. So
he's a psychologist.
He's a clinical. Was a clinical psychologist, and what he detected are the so-called drivers from transactional analysis. Be perfect. So now I'm missing it. Be perfect. Be strong. Hurry up, and things like that. So what did he detect? He observed his patients on a videotapes, and what he detected are specific patterns of communication, meaning a specific combination of words, tones, gestures, facial expressions that shows you that the person within the next 2 or 3 seconds is going to be in a non-okay behavior.
Okay.
So what he detected is a specific complex of behavior, verbal and non-verbal, that shows you that within the next moments, this person is going to be in a negative situation. So he can predict distress. Okay.
Uwe, one of the reasons we invited you, although we've already done some effort in the direction of personality traits and assessment, and we might do some in the future, what's kind of stuck out about PCM is that I thought it was a more pragmatic approach to it. So most of these other personality types are all based on the Big Five model. Let me just remind you, we did this last time, which is based on personality traits, which is agreeableness, openness to experience, neuroticism, conscientiousness, and extroversion. So these are basically almost all personality trait tests are based on some variation of what's called the Big Five. Now, what I liked about PCM, as I thought PCM is not a classical personality trait. It goes further. It's more pragmatic. It's more about a tool that I can use on a daily basis. And we're going to be looking at a bunch of different examples. So what I liked about it is PCM was one of the few that goes into the psychological trait analysis that is not based on the Big Five and is more pragmatic. So let's talk a little bit about the history of PCM.
So how it started was Dr. David Kaler, he's a clinical psychologist. He detected the so-called drivers in transactional analysis. Some of you may heard them: be strong, please you, try hard, hurry up, and be perfect, for instance. What is this, a driver? He observed his patients in clinical treatment situations. So he videotaped them and had a look at the videotapes. And what he detected and scientifically proved that there are unique combinations of words, tones, gestures, postures, and facial expressions that people show for 2 or 3 seconds before they are going to be in a non-okay behavior.
Is this like a micro expressions?
Yeah, it's a little bit longer than a micro expression. Okay. Micro expressions are shorter and only visible in the face. But the analogy is quite good because you can use it. So if you observe this, you can see, for instance, a specific situation like when I ask you the question, so what exactly, and I'm pointing out what you said after the meeting yesterday, is the reason why. Okay. So when I do it like this, I exactly know this was a be perfect driver for you, so you have to be perfect for me. What I know is, if you're not getting the correct connection, the right communication with me now, you will get some sort of preaches, you will see my conviction, and I will wear some sort of an attacker mask to you because you have the wrong values. So this is a de-stress.
So what you're saying, it's a great mechanism to predict behavior in others.
Behavior and de-stress. So with PCM, you can predict.
When you say de-stress, which means you're trying to de-escalate the situation.
No, de-stress, sorry, meaning that it's the negative side of your personality. So you show your character strength in the negative way. Okay. So for instance, if you are a person who is quite logical.
The person who's communicating is de-stressing or
I'm in a de-stressed inner mood, I would say. Okay. So I expect you, for instance, to be perfect and give me the right answer. Okay. And if you're not doing it, I'm going to really tell you and preach it to you. I will make a crusade. Okay.
I'm the classical DAO, the dumbest assumed user, in all of my podcasts. So can we go back to those 5 different points and can you give us a concrete example of what you mean with them? So what do you mean with this is part of everybody's personality trait that they want to be strong? Is it kind of the outward show that I'm sovereign, that I'm in control? Is that what be strong means?
No, be strong is an inner attitude that can be seen outside with these 5 cues. Okay. So, for instance, if somebody shows this be strong driver, it'd say, you know what, you're sitting here, listen to all the stuff and nothing happens. Okay. So then you know, oh, this person right now is showing the be strong driver and wanting other to do something.
So it's kind of a pushy communication model where I'm asking you to change your behavior. That's an example of be strong.
This was one example. Okay. And if you're trained in this and interpreting what you recognize as a communication, then you know which part of the personality this person is activating and which process of non-okay behavior will follow. Okay. So you can predict this. Okay. So now the distinction between other models is quite aware because you are observing communication and that's why it's called communication model. Okay. And if you see this kind of combination of words, tones, gestures, postures, facial expressions, then you know this part of the personality is activated. So you have a personality model and you have a communication model. Okay. Because you cannot communicate without personality. Okay.
So you mentioned the personality thing. Like a lot of models, PCM has defined
6 types.
6 types. What are those 6 types?
The 6 types are the thinker, for instance. Yeah. Then you have the persister, the promoter, the rebel, the harmonizer, and the imaginer. Okay. So these are the 6 types that are formed they are living in a house. We call it a condominium. Okay. So you have a 6-floor building where these guys are living. So one secret I want to tell you, you are not alone. Okay. Yeah. So 6 types within you.
So that's what I was going to ask you, because a lot of the other models kind of try to narrow you into one area, and you're saying that the thinker, which is logical, responsible, and organized; the persister, which is dedicated, conscientious, and observant; the harmonizer, which is compassionate, sensitive, and warm; the imaginer, which is the creative part, imaginative, reflective, and calm; the rebel, spontaneous, creative, playful; and the promoter, which is persuasive, adaptive, and charming. those are your 6 personalities that each one of us carry. That's an interesting concept because that's very different from the others where they're trying to tell you I'm an INFSGP green.
And if you mix them, you will have 720 combinations.
Okay.
So the question is, which kind of combination is sitting in front of me?
Okay.
Honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
And I don't care.
Okay.
Because I know how to communicate with this personality depending on the words and the combination of sentence patterns that is offered.
This is I have to play this back because this is interesting. So what you're basically saying, we have these 6 different personalities in us, depending on the context of the situation that we are, or maybe our emotional state, right? Yeah. Any one of these can break to the forefront, and if I'm observant of your communication, of your body signals, of your word choice, your intonation.
Correct.
I can tell in which of these 6 you are in.
Yes.
And that gives me, I'm assuming, the advantage of knowing how to deal with you better, or how to understand you, or
how to get a connection.
How to get a connection.
With this, right now, in this moment, with this part of your personality. I had an interest. I was on a trainer fair in Germany a few months ago, and there was one guy who was showing me his model because I'm interested in other models, how they are working. Yeah. And quite nice pictures, also some colors. And I asked him, okay, just imagine there's one person moving in front of you and asking you a question. How are you going to use your model in this situation? And he looked at me and said, what do you mean? Yeah. If this person, let's just imagine the door is opening here.
It's an evil question, a good but evil question.
Yeah,
it's not evil.
But this
it's a good question. It's a legitimate question.
Because this door is opening in your office, a person is coming in. So how are you using the Big 5, Insights, DISC, whatever model in this moment? Yeah. And
because a lot of it is based on assessment, which is nice, and it kind of gives you the sense that I'm in control or I understand the situation, but it doesn't necessarily tell you what am I going to do with it.
Yeah, and this is the big advantage of PCM, because what are you using from PCM? I use the communication part because I observe this person. So what's the posture? How is this person? What's the body tension? What about the face tells me? Is it this kind of or is it this one? It's a complete different energy status and a different part of the personality that's activated right now. And I know with PCM which kind of sentence. There's a question mark at the end. Is there an exclamation mark? Is it just a full stop at the end? Which kinds of words am I using? Should I use the word lovely and wonderful? Or should I use the word, oh, this is quite efficient?
Can you give us a more concrete example of one of your recent exchanges or experiences, so that the followers and viewers can maybe put this into a more...
There was a quite impressive example one of my participants of the last trainer certification gave me. So he was doing his first seminar, first day of seminar of a person that we are going to train. And the participant asked him, he's like, I have a question because I have a daughter at home, 8-9 years old, and for about years I have troubles with her. It's always the same in the evening. We are struggling with each other. We are shouting at each other, and this is not a good relationship. I do not like it. And he describes the daughter as a person with a high rebel energy, quite spontaneous, shouting out with likes and dislikes. Hey, it's so cool. And then the trainer gave him 3 or 4 tips. So what he's going to do in the evening. Just give a high five, forget about content, just play with her. He went at home after the seminar. Next day in the morning, he asked him, how was it? And he said to him, it was so fantastic because for about years, he had again contact with his daughter.
Wow.
And I must, when I tell the story, I still have, I'm quite touched with it because this is what PCM is about. And he was not aware of that with just changing a little bit of the inner attitude, with a little bit of different words, gestures, a different contact with the daughter. And now the best thing comes, the daughter said to him, hey, Pa, it's okay if you go to these seminars.
Oh.
So and these are the stories this is the sense for me why I do this job. You asked me about passion. This is the passion, because PCM in this situation makes a difference.
Okay.
Huh?
No, I'm actually thinking of a scenario that I had recently. I think if I were to give you feedback of how am I hearing it, how it's impacting me, I think we all struggle with communication. I think we all struggle with different personality types. I think we've all said this, maybe the person is just, we don't know what the person just went through the last 15 minutes, where they're coming from, what their mood is, what their home life is like. And I think we're all so focused on communicating what's important to us.
And focus on the content.
Yeah, and we're focused. We always think we're communicating rationally, and although most of it's emotional, that we forget to analyze the listener.
Yeah.
Where is the listener?
And the how of the communication.
What kind of feedback am I getting? I'll give you an example. I was recently at a hotel. I'm not going to mention the hotel, although I'm not happy with the hotel. I was unhappy with something. I didn't say anything. And when I was checked out, they gave me an additional charge. And I said, listen, I'll pay the charge, but I just want to let you know, I'm not really happy with the process of how I was booked. I was guaranteed this and this. I was supposedly guaranteed breakfast twice, okay? Mm-hmm. Although I don't really care about breakfast, but it was told to me twice when I checked in and when I made the reservation. And then they charged me for it extra. And then I said, all I wanted to do as a guest was to tell the receptionist, listen, I want to tell you about how my experience was. Mm-hmm. I don't expect you to give me anything for free, but I do expect you to listen to me, okay? Now, this is me trying to put her into that position, and she did not react to it at all. She started giving me attitude. She said, if you're going to talk to me that way, that's going to be the end of the conversation. And the funny thing is, I used to be on that end as well. I used to also work in hospitality a long time ago, and I learned how to kind of de-stress mm-hmm. situations. I don't know if that's the right use mm-hmm. of the word. But I caught myself in that position where I said, although she was actually the customer, I was a customer and she was mm-hmm. the customer service person, I was actually thinking about how does the customer have to deal with a customer service person so that I get the response that I want. You see it, mm-hmm. see it how it's mm-hmm. And that happens to me a lot of times when I'm talking to a hotline, when I'm talking to the airlines. You kind of have to psychology and understanding where people come from. And I think Stephen Covey with habit number 5 said, one of the key things to a higher level of collaboration is to understand and then be understood. And that's mm-hmm. what you're kind of saying with PCM, yes. is that it helps you maybe shift one gear down, take a bit of a distance and say, listen, I have something important to say, but what more important than what I have to say is, where's the person that I'm talking to? Yeah. Where are they at? How do I have to deal with them?
It's about the process of communication. Yeah. It's not about the content.
Yeah.
It's, do I have a connection right now?
Yeah.
I use this example. If you are calling your girlfriend and want to tell her, hey, I love you, babe.
Yeah.
And she's not picking up the phone. So you can tell her 10 times.
Yeah.
In the evening, she will say, I did not hear you telling me that you love me.
Yeah.
Because there was no connection.
Yeah.
And we have the same situation with people sitting in front of you or on the phone. And we are not recognizing if the other person is picking up the phone.
Yeah, this is a huge topic.
And this is the difference between PCM and other models, because if I observe the other person, the reaction, I really know, do I have a connection? If I have a connection, I understand which part of the personality is activated, and this I am using to get to continue the contact. Mm-hmm. Second option, I observe the connection and see, hey, we don't have a connection, but again, I know which part of the personality is activated, mm-hmm. but I didn't address this part so far. And then I use the right sentence and word and change my communication style, my interaction style, my management style to get back into the context again.
Let's, because I think there some of our listeners are perking their ears now. Oh, is there a solution to this? So what you're telling me is that PCM doesn't just help you to analyze in which one of these 6 psychological or distinct personalities people are in right now, but also how to change your communication so that you can get through to them.
Yes, because these parts of our personality have different kinds of perception of the world in this moment. So if I'm on my thinker floor, I'm perceiving the world through thoughts. So a meeting, by the way, if I attended a meeting, the meeting will be, this was efficient. If I'm perceiving the
So
world,
there's word cues that give you an indication of where the people are.
Even sentence patterns. And even facial expressions. If I'm on my harmonizer floor, in my condominium, I perceive the world through feelings.
Okay.
So I have compassion with the situation. So the same meeting, it was such a wonderful meeting. I was so happy to see all the people again.
Yeah.
So, okay, same meeting.
Yeah.
They perceive the same, in the same situation, in the same room, the same people with the same things. Another person would say, it was such a boring stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was great. And there's a like or a dislike. So then I know, okay, this person activated the rebel floor because it perceives the world through likes and dislikes, what we call reaction. Or this person in the meeting say, I'm still hanging on the first topic that you mentioned in the meeting. It was so fascinating for me. I see how this person is connected still to the thoughts of one part of the meeting. I know this person is right now on the imaginer floor.
Okay.
So, and this is how it works. If I know this, I know what this person needs right now.
Yeah.
It's about, did you ever go fishing?
Yeah.
What's the most important thing in fishing?
Patience.
No. I'm patient, but I don't catch any fish.
The right lure. She said the right lure.
It's about the bait.
The bait, yeah.
Yeah. Who is the one who should love this bait?
The person you're trying, the fish you're trying to catch.
Hopefully. Yeah. If I'm just throwing bait out in the communication that I like, what will you catch? It's the golden rule of management. Treat other people's like how you want to be treated.
Yeah, but that's not what PCM says, though.
No, it's a platinum rule in PCM.
Yeah.
Treat the others like they want to be treated.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because then you get out much more. So you use the platinum rule, and it's in the communication the same.
Yeah.
If I'm just throwing out Wiener Schnitzels because it's my favorite dish,
and you've got a bunch of vegans in the meeting,
then we'll not get a lot of
let's deep dive on the subject, because I've been doing a lot of facilitating workshops, which is part of also your and my expertise in what we do, and what I think is I'm going to take it one step back. What I think is fascinating about what you're saying is that a lot of this is resonating with me because it's based on a certain amount of common sense and something that I think we all subconsciously are aware of. But the fact that it's not conscious and we can't give it a name makes it difficult for us to steer. And I think that's the interesting proposition of PCM. The second thought that came up in your conversation, because I'm always interested in what's the pragmatic use, and you kind of said that's where your passion lies as well. Meetings have always been of great debate. I mean, there's the famous Twitter or X file from Elon Musk that basically told all of his employees, if you're in a meeting and you're bored and you don't feel like you're contributing, you have my authorization to leave. But ultimately, meetings are important in the business world.
It's all about content.
Because theoretically, it's the oldest, most effective, and theoretically most efficient way to communicate with multiple people. But let's go into that. If you're saying that we've got 6 different personalities, let's say you've got a meeting with 10 different people. They're all on a different stage.
Yeah, they have their preferred communication channels.
So how do you deal with that? How would you, if you've got a zoo of different listeners?
Yeah, but the good thing is that we have all of the 6 types and all of the 6 perceptions and all of the sentence patterns within us.
Okay.
So we can activate it because in our condominium, in our house, we have an elevator that you can use. If I'm now willing to perceive the world through the perception of imagination, I can do it right now.
I'm with you.
Coming back to this, so everybody who attends a meeting has the possibility to go to the thinker floor and exchange facts and figures, or can go to the persister floor to exchange opinions.
So it's not like the message is being lost on them. No. It's just that they might not receive it with full impact.
Yes, because maybe their elevator is not working correctly. So they're
Okay.
coming out of a meeting just before it was exhausting. They lost a contract or whatever. So they are a little bit out of energy. We would say they are stressed or even de-stressed. So they are showing already their negative sides of their condominium. If this is the case, then you have to bring them back in front of their elevator that they can go to the different floors. And this you can do with communication.
Let's keep it simple though, because my original statement was, okay, you've nailed it. That, let's face it, if you're sitting in front of 10 people, not all of them are hearing you the same way.
No, definitely
because they're a different thing. So the question is, but I only have, if I'm in the meeting, that's the whole thing. That's the collaborative nature. I can only communicate in one style at a time, right?
Yes.
Okay. But what you're saying is, if you effectively communicate in that style, you won't pick everybody up, but you can pick up a majority. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and you can invite the people to use different parts of their personality.
Okay, so there's ways to channel them into the right way of thinking.
Yeah, because they are going to. Everybody who attends a meeting wants to have an efficient meeting.
Yes.
Everybody wants to have an agenda. It's not typical for the thinker part within us. No, the human beings like it. I know how long it will take me because I respect my time schedule. I know who is invited. Are these the right people? I want to know who is doing the facilitation. So are there any rules? Everybody likes it, independent of the different personalities.
So there's a norm or a medium of presentation style that you can develop that appeals to the majority of the time.
Yeah.
But then what I'm sensing here is that when you go into the nitty gritty, when you start going into the conflict or you're going into the different interests, right? That's when you have to be more differentiated and say, okay, I've got 3 people over here that are in this stage.
You just observe them.
Okay.
Because you will immediately get a reaction of how the messages are received. I attended a presentation of a quite famous guy who developed a management model. And he did the presentation, I think it was 45 minutes, and he had a lot of thinker and persister energy. So he perceived the world mainly through opinions and thoughts. And he didn't change his tone of voice over these 45 minutes. And you can literally see people sleeping in this really interesting presentation. So the content was really valuable.
So he was a classical like professor type, highly educated, very rational, and great bullet points, wonderful long sentences explaining it.
Yes,
but very rational, without that emotional
and with
hook.
the glasses of PCM, you immediately know, okay, this is a person who is just using these 2 kind of perception, thoughts, and opinions. You can see this in a monotone voice. There's not a lot of movement in the body language, quite stiff standing in the front. So what's happening? There is no emotional contact with people who have a lot of imaginer, for instance, a lot of harmonizer, because they want to have feeling, a lot of rebel. They want to see emotional things. And you can use pictures, you can use YouTube clips or whatever to make it interesting. And this is because you asked me about the meetings. So you have to make offers to the people with different mixes of personality types. And if you're just using 2 of them, you're losing the people. We have now a client, they have a budget reduction program. They have the yearly employee conversations, and we prepared the managers for the leadership appraisals. I said, how are you going to tell your story? I said, we have this budget, we have to explain them. Very thinker approach. I said, but what's your story?
That's a kind of a safety blanket. I did a good job. I said it the way it was, but you're not taking it into consideration.
And it's my favorite dish. It's not the favorite dish of the other person. So I give you an example how you can frame the story. And you can say, okay, when you look back into last year, how our business developed, you can see this and this and that. And I'm quite happy to have this conversation, a yearly conversation with you right now. And I'm happy to talk about what's coming next. And yes, we have to even talk about the things that are not so fine in the next year because we will face budget restriction of 10%. This is very important because it's important for the substantial quality of the budget of the whole company, and your contribution is really needed. And as you know, I reserved a little bit of money for at least one Christmas party this year. Maybe it will not be in summer, but before Christmas, a small one. But now I would propose, let's start the engine and move on with the employee appraisal. So what I did is, did you realize it? I started with imagination, then switched to feelings, then facts, then opinions, then I had some fun, and then some.
So what you're saying is you can appeal to all, if people are in different stages, you can appeal to all of them.
Yes.
You can, and partly you do that through a storyline.
Yes.
Yeah.
Bill Clinton did it because TB consulted him in his first presidency when he applied for it. And what Bill Clinton learned is there were several interviews out there on YouTube. He was asked one question from the interviewer, and he answered in
And he assessed
he answered in 6 different languages. So he told the story. So why? Because he wanted to make offers to the audience to get a connection. Because first you need the connection, then you can talk about the content. And this is what you asked me about the meeting. So how to deal with it? I have to get into contact with the different people, and then I can talk about content.
But this is brilliant. So what you're basically saying, so let me go back to Bill Clinton. What you're basically saying, if you're aware of the PCM model, right?
Yeah.
And an interviewer, you can see their interviewer, you can see their body language, you can see their question, the wording. You can basically assess in which one of these 6 frameworks they're in, right? And respond in the appropriate way.
Correct. So there's one example. I had a CEO of a company. I facilitated a workshop, and I'm a base thinker, so I'm logical, organized, and I keep my time structure. And I saw that the discussion that we are leading will break up our time schedule. And I did this to the CEO. So we come back to this later with this movement. And he immediately did this and said, no, now we have to talk about this important topic. And I immediately know, okay, he's now approaching the persistent distress. Strong opinion. He's starting to attacking me a little bit. So this is what we call first degree distress. And with this, based on this observation, I thought to myself, hey, Uwe, be careful. What I did is I contacted him in the correct way to get back my connection. So what would you, from your point of view, recommend to do first to keep the time schedule? And we were back on track because I asked this person for his opinion, and nothing happened. And this is so fascinating. Before PCM, I would have explained him why it's, from my point of view, so important to follow the time schedule, and this discussion will not lead to the end, and now I'm my distress pattern and have endless sentences, and this would escalate then in a fatality. This is how PCM works. So I'm observing and then offering the right channel with the right words, the right tones, with my right perception. But this means that I have to change my inner attitude. I have to be a little bit more flexible and move away from my usual way of perceiving the world.
What you're saying is resonating with me, because like I said, I've done a couple of workshops where recently my big issue in the workshop was that we've had a number of different workshops and they've not really been fairly productive. We didn't come out with action items. There was a lot of ambiguity still, and not a lot of clarity. Still a lot of this vision, schmission stuff but no, let's get it done, right? I think Steve Jobs once said that that's one of the biggest illnesses in modern management, to think that the vision is 90% of the work.
Yeah,
it's maybe 3% of the work, right? The work is the work, right?
Sweating.
So I remember I used probably a thinker approach and created a very strong structure, and I pushed people through it. And I think the overall workshop was fairly successful, but I did create a certain amount of distress with the people, and this is making me think. I think they kind of got over it, but that's not the idea. It's not about letting them get over it. The question is, are you reaching out to them? Are you changing your
this Corona time brought us a lot of online business.
Yeah.
And what I learned is when I I'm conducting an online workshop or meeting, I always want to see the people. So they are not on a black screen.
A lot of people don't want to.
Yeah, but I do not care. But this is the rule for my...
I agree with you, but they do that intentionally so they can stay anonymous.
Yeah, because why I'm going to do this? Because when I'm talking, I'm throwing baits all the time. All the time. Communication.
Yeah.
And then
you're trying to get feedback, cues.
Yeah, and then I'm having a look at the people. So how's the reaction? There's one guy looking like this. Then I know, okay, this is rebel distress number 1.
Yep.
This person is trying hard to understand me. So what I'm going to do, I will make it, after a few sentences, when I'm through with my thing, I will make an offer to this person to get back into contact. Like, I'm offering some funny statement. Hey, it's a cool shirt that you're wearing.
Yeah.
And then he started to laugh. We have back connections. What I want to ask you is, are there any questions on my topic from before? And then you will see this person switch the floors in the condominium, moving the elevator, and then I have back the contact again.
I tell you what I do, and it'd be interesting here. What I usually do when I detect a negative facial expression or a certain level of resistance, I usually stop and I actually address that person in a friendly tone.
How are you going to address it?
Well, I usually...
I'm looking at, let's make an experiment.
Yeah.
I'm the participant, and I'm sitting like this.
What I usually do if I'm in a flow of talking about something, I'll usually stop and I'll pause. I'll be quiet, and then I'll say, Uwe, and I'll kind of say it friendly and jokingly. I said, Uwe, I see that you might not be agreeing with me.
Yeah, and if you see this face, you immediately know, hey, this is persistent first degree distress. Yeah. This person needs a question for opinions.
Yeah, but
it's a different phrasing. Yeah. So if we would ask me, hey, Uwe, what's your view on
that? That would be my next. That would be my next statement. I say, so tell me, what are you thinking?
This is
are you disagreeing with me? Because I want you
to you mentioned. Tell me what you are thinking.
Yeah.
This is an order. It's not a question.
Okay.
Very important, because in my situation when I'm sitting here and you give me an order, this is not respectful for me. So it will increase my distress level.
Okay.
So if you rephrase your statement in a question, hey Uwe, what's your opinion on this? You will see a relaxed face, because then I can tell my skeptical statement, and we have back the connection. It's just a different phrasing.
I'll tell you why I give him an order, because I want to distress him even further.
Yeah.
I want to distress him even further so that his statement is as honest as I can possibly get.
Yeah, but you are a cowboy, huh? So you really have to know if you can ride this horse.
Yeah.
It can be that if this happens 1 time, twice, 3 times, you will lose the contact to this person over a meeting, over a 2-day seminar, and then in the feedback you will see it immediately.
Yeah. Huh? I think we were talking about this before we sat down. I think the online business has been really, really interesting, because I think doing something online is very, very difficult. And I mean, both of you and I are used to getting good feedback. But what I do notice is that there's always one outlier, or not always, but on a reoccurring, there's always one outlier which is completely it's like, did you attend the same meeting? Did you attend the same presentation? Because they have a complete, and this PCM gives me a model to kind of think about where did I lose this person? Because I think you agree with me as well. I mean, even if 90% or 95% of the people that you're talking to are happy, you can't win them all, but we try to. At least we're self-reflective and we want to know, hey, listen, where did I lose you? You know, what could I have done to maybe involve you? And
for me, PCM is a toolbox. Yeah. So I'm looking into my box and say, okay, which tool do I have to get back the connection? And if I look to this and I say, oh, there's no tool in it, then what I'm going to repeat is my usual behaviors who are not successful.
Yep.
And with PCM, I increase my toolbox.
Yep.
And this is the way how PCM works. And this is different to other models, because other models, they are really, really good because they want to describe personality. It's not about interaction. PCM comes from a complete different side. It's going to describe interaction. It's how to get contact. It's about sentence pattern. And as a side effect, PCM has a personality model in the backpack as well.
It's a framework with concepts that try to give very abstract concepts words so that you can express them and deal with them. It's kind of a mechanical. What you said beforehand, there's a link between the mechanical process thing and how we can work with it. Sounds a little bit unemotional, but it's very emotional in reality. But it's just a systematic approach to getting things done. You mentioned, and let's I think a lot of the listeners are probably suffering under this issue, that they have to communicate in meetings, either online or in person, to different people, different stakeholders with different emotions. And I don't think this podcast can serve as a 100% foolproof guideline step by step on how to do that. I think we'll have to talk about what education programs there are out there. Yeah. But maybe just a rough guideline. What are some things that people could do in preparing for a meeting that would guarantee that? What are some of the standard recommendations that PCM kind of remind you of what to think about when you're going into a meeting?
If you know PCM or without knowing PCM?
Well, for those people who are listening, probably don't know PCM. Yeah. So, what would be some basic? What we kind of in German we say die Vorstufe, before I get to PCM. What would be some good recommendations that I could get from PCM that would make my meetings better?
One thing, if you are addressing people, try to do it with different energies.
Yeah.
So with some fun, with an emotional statement, where you really be happy to see the people, make some structure, bring in some opinion that's an important topic or what's the important outcome, and also let some time to reflect. A small exercise, just think about which question can pop up. And bring in some to do. What can you do? Yeah. Bottom line, what's it to do? Activation. So it's definitely the sixth perception. If you include this in your intro over the day, and then you can use, for instance, some slides, some videos to support.
So change the medium.
Yes. And
change the pace, change the tone.
Last week I got a phone call from one of our trainers. Said, "Uwe, help me. I have a group of people," it was a PCM seminar, they are, I think 90% have a lot of thinker energy, but they do not talk to me when I ask a question to them.
Oh my God. Yeah.
You ask a question to 15 people in front of you.
And nobody answers.
Nobody answers. So that's easy. If they have a lot of thinker or persister approach, what they need is they have a preferred social environment that's called one-to-one. Mm-hmm. So make the following. Just let them stick their heads together for 1 or 2 minutes and let them generate questions. One-on-one. Just 1 or 2 minutes. Yeah. With the neighbor, you've heard this now. What are your questions on that? 1 minute. And then you have unbelievable an amount of questions. Why? Because they get their social environment, their preferred one. If they're sitting in the plenary, this is not their preferred social environment. So what you can create is for a minute or two, a safe space for them. And then you will get all the questions. If you don't do it, you will suffer because they are so quiet and looking to you. They don't have any questions. Mm. And she called me in the evening and said, "Oh, this idea was brilliant. Just about applying PCM."
Sometimes it's just a small step, but you're missing that one step, right?
Yeah. And with online seminars, it's the same. When you look to the people on the flat screen and you, "What are your questions?" You will get no response at all. So I think you do it the same way. You call them by the name. Yeah. So, Uwe, what's your take on that? Yeah. And then you have a contact. So what's happening? You're doing a one-to-one in the plenary. And this is PCM, applied PCM. So this is a recommendation. If you have a group of people not answering to your questions, let's have a one-on-one conversation with them for 1 minute and gain the questions.
There was a thought that I had before and it popped up again, and it's something that a realization that I've had, and these are not new realizations, but sometimes old realizations that you have for the 150th time really sink in. One of the things I notice, and sometimes you say things offhandedly that really address an issue. One of the things that I addressed in a workshop that we had, where people were talking, there was a lot of energy, there was a lot of different opinions, and I was listening because I was trying to perceive the different sides. One of the things that I find a reoccurring phenomenon in meetings is that a lot of times is wasted in meetings because you have different people with different interests that feel the need to communicate legitimately, rightfully so, their stance. And usually it starts off with, sometimes it's the department head who says, this is important to me.
We should do something about it.
We should do something about it. And then somebody raises their hand and says, yes, but, and then they say something completely different. Mm-hmm. And the department head is not listening and feels, you're not responding to what I just said. Mm-hmm. I feel like you're not listening. I have to repeat myself.
Mm-hmm. You know what is one reason why this happens? It's the word but.
Maybe, but there we go. So what he says is, I have the feeling that they double down and they repeat themselves, and the person who said something says,
no connection.
They feel like, well, you're not listening to me, so I want to make sure that my point is heard, so they repeat themselves. And often you're in workshops where you have 10 different parties talking past one another. They might not even have a conflict, but they don't feel like you're listening. And one of the standard things I say is that we don't really speak. I don't believe that human beings are that adamant about being right all the time.
No.
I think what's more important to them is being heard.
Yes.
And they're willing to relinquish their opinion if the majority thinks something else, as long as they have the feeling, I've been respected in the process, you've actually listened to what I've said, and the majority prefers something else for a legitimate reason that you share that I understand. That's kind of the challenge of communication.
It's about the process of communication. That's why the model is called like this. It's process communication model. It's about the communication process. It's not about the content. It's about I'm respected with my way of communicating with other people.
Yeah.
And it's not about, hey, you're saying your point of view, I'm saying my point of view. There's no connection between.
And you can see it on the faces where you can see, I feel disrespected because you're not valuing my opinion. They're not listening to your opinion. They're trying to get their opinion across.
And the interesting thing is, it's not done intentionally.
No.
When you told the story, I had a situation in a seminar in mind. It was, I think, 5:00 p.m. Everybody was tired. It was in the winter. Outside it was dark. A lot of content, and there's one person starting a statement. So PCM. When I compare this to other models, like I had seen a long, complicated sentence. So my colleague heard the question. There was no question, and started an explanation as well, a long one. I was observing this and say, hey, I think there must be added something to this answer of these questions that never was asked. So I added something with a long sentence as well. This circle moved on for about 10 minutes. And then I realized, hey, now something in the facilitation is moving the wrong direction. You can literally see the people.
Because the people are not involved, they're watching you go around in the carousel.
And then I'm thinking about, now I'm going to apply PCM. So what's happening here? There was one participant with we call the be perfect driver of the thinker. Be perfect explanations.
So for those of you who are confused with the vocabulary, don't worry, we're going to talk about where you can get training so that you can understand that in greater depth. But we'll get to that.
So a complicated sentence. My colleague, again, a complicated sentence. Me, a complicated sentence. So
you're adding like fuel to the fire.
No, it's a virus infection. If one guy starts, you invite the other starting as well. So what I did, I'm using PCM. So I saw this person, complicated sentence means, okay, this person is in the thinker flow. What does he need right now? It's a simple question. And I asked him, is there any questions that you want to have answered from us? And he said, no, I just want to add this. And the situation was resolved. And I was standing like this, wow, this is the power of PCM. Because if I would have seen this earlier, I would have saved 15 people 10 minutes of lifetime.
I don't know if it was PCM, but many years ago when I was working in hospitality, I worked for the Four Seasons Hotel Company, and the whole staff was trained on, it was probably a PCM principle. We were taught on how to deal with complaints.
Yeah.
And they said, the biggest mistake that we make when people are aggressive and angry is that we go into a defensive mode, right? When all they really want is they want to be heard.
Yeah.
And we were taught simple sentences like, oh my God, that happened to you? If that happened to me, I would be upset as well.
Yeah, you respect them.
Okay.
And the emotion.
And it says it's like the wind going out of their sails. They're like, what did he just say? What did she just say?
Yeah, I'm heard.
I'm heard, right? And I think this is such a powerful thing, and it's such a wonderful human thing too. I once again, I'm going to double down on a statement. I don't think that people are so adamant about always being said you're right and everything you say is correct, because we're not stupid. I think we realize that a lot of the things we say are not that smart sometimes. But we want to be respected and we want to be heard. I think that's an important thing. I think also that example of the teenager, the rebel thing. I think teenagers, they don't want you to force feed your opinion. They want to be heard. Yeah. And it's that kind of, heard and then be heard, I think is a key thing. Mm-hmm. Let's go one step further, because you're a trainer.
Yes.
So you train other trainers. Mm-hmm. You train individuals so that they can use this in real life. Mm-hmm. And you do consulting. Yeah. Okay. Can you give us, and for those of you who said, hey, can we book this guy? You can book it, but that's not why I'm asking the question. Maybe also. I'm asking this question because I think that might be the question of a listener. Says, if I need something, if I feel like our communication, everybody would say this, can be improved, it's kind of a rhetorical statement. What would it look like if I would get a PCM trainer? What's kind of the process? What's the kind of consulting that you do? Mm-hmm. What would a consulting contract look like? What are some of the scenarios where you would come in and work your magic? The
easiest way is just to go to the website, and we have, I think, now 180 certified PCM trainers in Germany. Austria,
so finding is one thing, but I'm more interested in. I'm the GM of a company, and we're having difficulties in our company. How would the actual interaction work with it? They invite you in, and
yes, they invite me in for getting to know. And my first question in the interview is always, does this come from the people, or is there a structural thing? Yeah. Because if you have a structural issue in your company, PCM is the wrong tool. Okay. So if your structures and processes are wrong, and this is the reason for the conflicts, please repair this. And yes, you can use PCM as a toolbox for interaction. Anyway,
so there might be organizational development issues.
This is not the solution. Yeah. So if there is,
that's an important thing you're saying. Yeah. So the processes, you're not process people.
No, process in the sense of
system, organizational system.
Communication process, a different story. Okay. So if there are the human beings in the team have differences and difficulties with each other, then PCM is the right tool. So what are we doing is, we are not doing a team building. We are not doing a conflict resolution seminar. We are doing some sort of communication and self-management seminar. Mm-hmm. And everybody's relieved. Oh, God, I'm so happy that we are.
So you sometimes package your first input as a seminar. Yeah. Because it also gives you the opportunity to kind of establish a common language and a common understanding.
Correct. And it's the people have the feelings of, oh, it's not about us having problems that we have to go there.
It's not a judgment it's not a judgment.
We're just learning something about communication. So what's happening then? We talk about types, condominium, behavior, okay behavior, psychological needs.
You're giving people language for their feelings.
Yeah. And what's happening is everybody, literally everybody, has in front of his or her mind a situation, family, business, both. This exactly was the sentence my boss said, my employee said, my partner, my kid said. How the fuck does this guy know without knowing my guys? Because these are typical patterns. Yeah. So what's happening? Beside the official PCM seminar, everybody is dealing with his or her own
because they're putting it in their personal context. And now you're going from seminar actually to...
So what happens on day 2? The questions are coming. So I have a question.
Which is the best sentence.
I have a person
Yeah, I have a friend.
And then you're talking about their issues.
Yeah.
And the most important thing is that they see that people are okay. Mm-hmm. And they cannot escape their own personality. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes you are a passenger of your own patterns. And then they realize, okay, my colleague, now I know why we have troubles with each other, because my communication is always asking questions, and this person needs clear orders until when he or she has to do this. Mm-hmm. Oh, now I know first what to do and why it's getting so difficult if he and myself are not getting the correct communication. Yeah. And this resolves so many situations. Everybody says this after years. This was the best seminar because it's so clear for me now why it's happening. So this is one thing that everybody says, you have to come again because we want to practice this. And this is maybe a disadvantage of PCM because it's a behavioral model. It's like, you have a driving license?
Yeah.
Yeah. How long did it take you to drive a car correctly? So more or less correctly?
A week.
A week. So it's not about reading a book and then driving a car. Yeah. And same with PCM. Yeah. It's, if you're starting to play tennis, starting to riding with horseback riding, whatever, it's behavior.
Well, I think what you're addressing with the seminar intro, I do say this, and I think one needs to respect the discipline, because why reinvent the wheel? I think you need to create a common understanding of a framework, mm-hmm. language, basic process. So there is that entry point, and I think it's interesting, the seminar, because I think you have to respect the discipline. I think what you're doing with the seminar thing is you're creating an understanding of a framework. Let's because there's many different ways to design a framework, but let's agree this is the framework. These are the mechanism, the vocabulary, common language, and I think that takes a certain time. What you said that is, for example, anybody who goes on a tennis court, holds a tennis racket, is playing tennis. Yeah, but that's no statement of whether they're playing it well. So does it make sense before you play golf, before you play tennis, before you do? They take a couple lessons, yes. Mm-hmm. But what you're saying, and I think this is actually, I think this is actually something that I would actually find appealing in the PCM process, and there would also be a question that comes out of that, is that the real work takes place then in follow-ups. So I'm guessing you, from a consulting perspective, you offer your services that you come on a regular basis, potentially also the clients for, if they're I don't know if it's a team building thing or it's a large project,
half a year later for a follow up or something like that.
Yeah. So
or
you do
one-on-ones coaching, for instance. Yeah. But we give them homeworks, for instance, because human beings and people are not educated to observe communication. In the hospitality, you mentioned it yourself. You have to learn it, to observe how to deal with the complaint. It's quite ridiculous. So we're dealing with people and not learning how to deal with people.
So few people know. Everybody knows what service is until they have to give it.
Yeah. So this is quite, so people are not used to this. Yeah. So the first step always is we are inviting the people to look at communication in a different way, to observe what can I see, what can I hear, what are the tiny little things that I can see in the face. So how are the hands are used when talking. And this you can easily train when you watch movies. So this is a good exercise after the first seminar. So have a look at your favorite Marvel movies or the Pixar movies. There's one out there with a lot of emotions you can observe quite well. So just observe, what are you going to see there and how would you respond to this person? And then they come back and say, I have a question. If this guy, if Hulk would sit in front of me,
I've got a Hulk example I'm going to ask you afterwards.
So, how I'm going to deal with this? And this is then the step 2. So now we are trying to make the correct offer and to observe what's happening. This is the most important thing. Normally we are throwing offers and we do not observe anymore. This is the respect you mentioned. Do I really listen to you? What are you saying? I'm interested in the things that you listen. Or when you're talking, I'm preparing my next statement. I'm not connected with you. And this is what PCM is all about. It's not a rocket science. Yeah?
I like the fact that you used the word Hulk, because I was thinking, I was recently on YouTube and I was looking at an older report about the heiress of a Korean family. They own the Korean Airlines.
Okay.
There was a famous incident where she was in first class, and she asked for a drink of water, and they brought her water, and they brought her macadamia nuts, which was the trigger for her to go Hulk, because they brought the macadamia nuts in a bag, and she wanted it brought in a bowl, right? And she started berating the stewardess. Then she asked to get her boss, and he says, "Get the manual." And he brought the manual. And in the manual it says, "All macadamia nuts will be brought in bags for hygiene reasons." And she went ape. She went berserk. It was a major scandal. They stopped the plane. It was just about to take off. They had to land again. She made the purser get off. It was a big scandal. My question to you, I guess this is maybe not a funny story, but it's interesting. Are there Hulk situations? So I think everybody goes to Hulk. I go Hulk every once in a while, and people who love me know sometimes you just need to smile at me and say everything's okay, and then I'll immediately that's what deflates me right away. I'm misbehaving. I'm not acting the way I want to. I'm not being my better self. Are there situations that are non-rescuable? Are there Hulk situations?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. You can only invite people to get out of their distress behavior. Sometimes it doesn't work due to different reasons, because they are so distressed, and maybe this situation caused some flashback in her personal history that you do not even know. Yeah. So it's a regression to some.
Supposedly the whole family has a problem with it.
Yeah. So,
but I mean, she had them kneel before her. She wanted to slap them. I mean, this is like this is extreme example. I don't think we have to worry. I hope you don't have to worry about this kind of stuff at work.
Some of the people are not healthy.
Yeah.
So you can just make invitations to other people to get out of their distress behavior. And normally for the healthy people, normal situation, it works perfectly well.
I also find from my personal experience, also from hospitality, sometimes you become so good at accommodating and de-escalating, but then there's some times where you just have to put your foot down and say, listen, you're crossing a line, and if you cross that line further, and that's what creates the realization.
It's for security reasons. And I think we have to think about another topic, interesting one is, am I responsible for this situation, or how far am I responsible?
Yeah, how long are you going to carry this?
Yeah, so if this Hulk person needs some mental treatments, this is not my responsibility to offer this in this situation, but my responsibility is to keep it for the other passengers safe or whatever.
What I've always been a great admirer of is those people who can stand their ground, but without raising their voice, without getting uncomfortable, without getting rude. Those people I admire.
And with the eyes of PCM, each offer in communication causes some response in your own behavior.
Yeah.
And the question is, do you see the train coming?
Yeah.
And with PCM, you train yourself, hey, there's a train coming. And I can make a decision to avoid the conflict with this train, or it hits me directly into the face. And with PCM, you get a higher awareness of, hey, I see a train coming, but I do not react to it. So I do not use this invitation.
So I like that last sentence of yours. One of the thoughts that kind of came up from when I was listening to you was maybe it's just me, maybe it's a couple of the viewers as well, saying, okay, PCM is a great way to kind of put yourself in a driver's seat and to be more conscious of what's going on around me. Kind of to take it's maybe a little bit of an outer body experience to say, listen, don't get so involved in the process, but really be observant and kind of take the cues and kind of like a conductor, right? But one of the reflections I had, and maybe this is also based on my personal needs, is I always say, okay, it's one thing to use a tool on others, but are you using it on yourself? And I don't know if that's a higher level or for you on the same level. I think that PCM could be a wonderful, wonderful tool, not only to kind of control my environment, which we'll talk about that later, might go into the perception of manipulation, but also to use it for myself, because I think how often are we aware of our where we are? Are we conscious of our behavior? Are we, I mean, we feel it, but are we really cognizant and aware of, hey, I'm going into the distress situation, right?
It's so interesting because we experience this in any seminar. When you talk about observation, people tend to observe the others.
We always see others, but we don't see it within.
So you need a mirror. So the good is you have the others as a mirror to see yourself. So of course you can observe yourself. So when I'm observing myself right now, why am I using my hands like this? Because I want to explain something.
I have to take the seminar because the promise of being able to understand the subtleties is very appealing.
Why am I using my hands like this? Because I have a big thinker part. This is my strongest part in my personality, and I like to explain things in a structured way. And I have my hands, the fingers, the hands that supports me in that. And if I realize that, hey, I see this behavior in the mirror. So if I'm aware of this, I'm coming back to this train, I see the train coming, and then I can decide which kind of reaction am I going to do now. I think Viktor Frankl said it once. So there is a time slot in this reaction.
There's a action, and then there's that space in between before you react. That's what you have control over. And, wonderful statement,
and this you can make a little bit longer with PCM, because if you're aware of, hey, I have the decision now, should I accept this invitation to go into my distress behavior pattern, or should I use my elevator to de-escalate it? It's my decision. And we changed, I think a few years ago, we changed our trainer certification. We videotaping all of the sessions that our trainers are doing, and their homework is have a look at it and observe yourself, because you still remember what was the feeling I had in this situation, and then I can learn so much about my own.
Do I like what I'm seeing?
What was the reason for this? Because you have probably things in mind that the other people do not see, because there's a flashback into a presentation in school and whatever. We don't know it in the outside, and this is such a learning experience. That's why all of the people who went through our certification process say, I learned so many things about myself and why.
Which I think is, at the end of the day, almost more valuable than...
Why? Because if you can self-manage yourself, your psychological need, do I get my preferred social environments? Do I have a job where I can live out my most important character strength? Do I have this? This you can use for job design, for creating your family situation in a different way, talk about relationship in a different way. So what's the benefit out of it? Your elevator is getting energy. So you are quite more flexible to use all the potential on the different layers of your condominium. And this is the most important thing.
What I find incredibly appealing, regardless of whether one likes the verbiage, the vocabulary you use, I like the fact that with these 6 models, you can give the things a name, and you can identify where am I, right?
We made an interesting experience. We have clients. Yesterday I had a phone call with one. Since 2007, we are working together. So this is 17 years. And I think for about 10 years we're using PCM. And what they describe as, they defined a vocabulary in talking about conflicts, motivation, leadership. And if somebody says, hey, my rebel needs some food and fun, everybody knows what this person needs right now. It's one sentence. Before PCM, they have to explain in a feedback conversation, why did I behave like this? What do I really need? It lasts so much. It's saving time.
It's saving time. It creates effective and efficient communication. And I've heard you and Marcus talk what I call your Chinese, where I'm fascinated. They obviously know what they're talking about, but you can see the energy and the expediency of the communication.
You're speeding up the conversation about relationship, the soft side of our business. Yeah.
So you mentioned a couple things which I didn't want to just go past because they're important. Bullet points. You said it helps you in defining your future career path. It helps you with meetings. It helps you with creating collaboration. It helps you in conflict situations. It should definitely probably be part of your leadership development program.
Yes.
Okay. So that's important. We mentioned beforehand, a lot of people might say this sounds a little bit like NLP, or some people might hear some Václavic or Viktor Frankl. I mean, they all revolve around the same topic because it's a dominant topic. I think one of the number one feedbacks you get for NLP or anything that has to do with identifying behavior and influencing, I'm going to use a neutral word intentionally. Some people will look at you and say, but isn't that a form of manipulation?
Then let's talk about manipulation. If you're doing things with a bad intention, the relationship sooner or later will break up. And from my point of view, you're influencing people from the breakfast until the breakfast. Your family, you were influencing me here too. You want to guide me through your topics. I want to influence you that I can bring my topics here. And is it okay? Yes, because this is an important thing. We both have a benefit out of it.
It's reciprocal.
It's okay.
It's reciprocal.
Okay. Yes.
And we discussed it beforehand, and there's a certain level of agreement, and there's a flow that's taking place. I often say that, for those people who kind of, do this with their nose and say, hey, that's manipulation. I'm like, look, if you were to map out the process of marketing, of motivation, of influence, and then map out the process of manipulation, the process is identical.
Yeah.
The only thing, and this is really, really important, the difference is the intent.
Yeah.
And to put it simple, in American terms, manipulation is always win-lose.
Correct.
And are we creating a win-win situation? Correct. Which brings us back to that concept. I think the real key to also PCM is, am I listening to others? Am I giving them respect? Do they feel involved? Do they feel, are they engaged? Do they, then it's not about who wins at the end of the day.
And then you make a difference. Yeah. I think, and you make a difference that makes a difference in the relationship and in the results.
Yeah. So for those of you out there, I'm definitely interested. I want to know this question, not just for them. So if you're not interested, I'm interested.
I have the form for you afterwards.
Where can one get a seminar like this?
Yeah, as I mentioned, you can book a seminar with one of our trainers on the open seminars and get into contact in a 1, 2, or 3 day seminar.
We'll put the link to your website on here for anybody that's interested.
Yeah. And once you're on the hook, you're interested on more. This is I had one of the trainers.
Is it a promise or a threat?
This is, I don't know. I'm not sure. I had one of the trainers. He called me. He's like, I'm interested in this education, this PCM. What can I expect? And I told him, once you attend the first seminar, we have you on the hook.
Okay.
And after the certification, he said, you were right.
Put a positive touch to that. What's the positive sell on?
The positive seller is you really learn a lot about yourself. You learn how to get into contact with people that you know, that you love in a different way. So your relationships will be better. And the most important thing, we will have a lot of fun.
So I guess the analogy would be also, for example, for those of people who do play tennis or something, you might be a sensational tennis player, but you still take part in workshops and training sessions because there's still something that you can perfect, and that's what you
and maybe you always wondered why your forehand doesn't work that well, and then you see a different way to use it and say, hey, this now I can
cool.
play the Champions League.
One of the things that we discussed before, and one of the things we always kind of do towards the end of our podcast, is we kind of ask for recommended reading. And what I always do is I went to Amazon and I Googled PCM. I couldn't find anything.
Yes, because you can find all the books on our website, so they're not available.
Those books are available on your website. Is there a particular reason why they're not on Amazon?
No.
Probably because the authors don't want to be on Amazon.
No. The publisher doesn't want to be on Amazon.
Okay.
There's one recommendation I can give. One of the guys, one of the colleagues from the US, Nate Regier, he's a certifying master trainer. He certified me in PCM. And he wrote a really interesting book about PCM. he built it up in a novel. So it's a nice story, like the 1 Minute Manager series. And you learn a lot about PCM, how it works in the day-to-day life of a manager.
So kind of in a fictional story.
Yes, and it's really easy to read. After 2 hours, you are through, and the doors will open then.
Good.
So I will give you the recommendation. Seeing people through.
Oh, very good. like the title. Uwe, I've had a blast. We also asked this question towards the end. My lovely support crew. Do you have any questions for Uwe? Can I add to that? Because you went extreme. You went extreme, which I thought is awesome. She said, how does the external politics of society influence? But there's politics within a company as well. So maybe you can say something about that.
Maybe you can repeat the question because they don't hear me.
Okay, so the question from Nellie was a hardcore question. Was in a world that's full of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, the political situation is heightened. How that has an impact on how people behave in companies. So you might have different factions, whether it's one political view or the other political view. People at their core might like each other, but this is kind of we have kind of this trend of separation right now. So that was the extreme question. I would add that I don't really think politics doesn't just apply to external politics. I think internal politics are just as challenging as detrimental. How to impact that and how PCM might be able to help us with that.
That I want to distinct two things. I think when you're talking about this external politics, it's very often about values, independent on the party, if it's left, right, up, down, whatever. It's all about
perceived values.
Perceived values, and they fight for these values. And this has, in PCM, we would say, this has a lot to do with persistent energy, with a lot of opinions. And people who have this want to be recognized for their opinions and for their convictions. So what does this mean? Recognized. This means that there's no need to accept it. It's more about keeping the conversation up and running. So I can respect your engagement, your dedication for the things you do, but I will not share the same values. And this makes in communication a huge difference. So it's the building the bridge. So I do not share your values, but I can honor the dedication that you give for this, the work that you invest in, the structures that you're building up. And I have a different conviction. And I'm really interested in your opinion. How can we build the bridge and find a compromise? So I'm using PCM for building a bridge with the persister language. And this is what's missing in politics, in the external politics right now, is the will to find compromises.
Common ground.
Common ground. So, okay, we know we will not push through 100%, but if we have both 70-70, then we can move forward. And this is the willingness to do so is not very high right now. So it's about respecting the position and I don't want the other person to get rid of it, because this you never can do. Just accept it, because then you can still have a communication. The worst word here is but. Because when I start, but now I will explain it to you. From the moment on you use the word but, I disrespect your situation. I put mine
I'm elevating mine.
Yes, and this usually cycles up into a bad story. So this is one thing. And second answer to the inner politics, very often it's a power struggle and people want to climb up the eye ladder. This is a different way.
A paradigm of scarcity. There's not enough for everybody. We have to compete.
This is a different approach. It's more a manipulation game, and it's not. I think it's a different reason for the politics.
I think that's probably more scary, because I think to answer your question, I think one of the ways you can probably deal also with the external politics is to create very straightforward rules that are equal for all, and that is to create a secular, non-political safe space within a company where you say, listen, in your private life you can believe and do what you want, but let's create a common understanding of that we respect each other and deal with diversity and whatever else we have. But I think I agree with you. I think the internal politics that can get very scary.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Did you have any other questions, Rico? Good. Time has flown by. How long did we take?
It's 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Time has flown. It's always a good sign that we had a good conversation. I had a good time. I hope the viewers have learned something. I still have the feeling, I think myself and the viewers are still saying, hey, there's a lot of questions we have. I don't know how clear it is for us, but I think we've created and I think that was the ambition of this podcast, a rudimentary understanding and an interest. So you've gotten our attention, you've gotten our interest, right? We're doing the AIDA thing. Hopefully there's demand and then there's action. I'll leave that up to you guys, okay? Uwe, it was a real pleasure on my part. Thank you so much. And
I'm really happy. Thanks for inviting me. And I really enjoyed the 2 hours with you.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. All the best. Thanks. Take care.